their way dump out there, worked to get the Green Party on the ballot in Texas, worked in city council elections down in Kimberly, worked on the Texas Supreme Court elections. So we've got a wide range of experience I've had. I've worked with several of the folks here in this room on some of those projects, and I anticipate
So are there any other questions? If you have any legal questions, I think, Michael, if you want to ask David that issue that you say the Secretary of State says the council records about
it. That's very interesting. The Secretary of State's regulations, some of them, as they've been promulgated, have referred to the phrase cast vote record. A cast vote record is like a tally sheet, whereas the statutes refer to a ballot image, which obviously would be a picture of the actual ballot. Those are inconsistent, and we look forward to exploring those inconsistencies in how the state statute and the regulatory scheme is set up, and of course in the inconsistency in what has happened at the county level, where there have been some representations that we have ballot images, and then some representations that all we have is these tally sheets. The statute runs. Yeah. The legislature, as a legal matter, what the legislature enacts is superior to the regulations that are promulgated by state agencies. The idea is that the regulations promulgated by state agencies are for the purpose of putting into effect what the legislature has enacted. Periodically, regulatory agencies make mistakes in interpreting the legislature. I know you're all shocked. Government agencies make mistakes. They're made out of human beings, just like human beings.
I just thought it might be helpful if you clarify a little further exactly what a cast vote record looks like. I was at the recount and I did see what it looked like, and so I'd be glad to describe it.
Yes.
What I saw was a piece of paper that listed really only the winner of a certain race. It did not show all the people that were running against each other, which is what a ballot shows. It shows you all the candidates. The piece of paper we counted, or we observed being counted, only shows the winner of that particular race, let's say, and the way that particular voter had voted. That was the only name that showed up. I just wanted to clarify that it is not a ballot.
So it's not a ballot image. And I think when we all think of a ballot image, we've all been to electronic ballot box. We've all cast our vote there, and we see what it looks like. We see what the ballot looks like in front of us. And when you say ballot image, we think, well, that's a photograph, or that's a PDF, or that's a GIF, some kind of electronic image of that. And that's not, in fact, apparently what's been reported on the machines for what the county has made available in the recount. This concern has been raised to the county previously. The NAACP filed a lawsuit about this several years ago. It was thrown out because the NAACP didn't have standing to go forward because the NAACP hadn't been harmed. They said, the Texas Supreme Court said, well, you guys can't raise this issue, but a candidate who actually gets harmed by this could raise this issue. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a candidate. Well, and that's interesting. It's actually illegal under Texas law to take a picture of your own ballot. That seems a little fishy, but there is, before, we ascribe everything to negative motivation. There is a good motivation for it, especially in the 19th century, the early 20th century. People were often subject to coercion about their voting by both unions and by employers. Hey, you better give me some proof that you voted for the guy that I want you to vote for. Otherwise, you know, accidents can happen. You know what I'm saying? So laws were enacted to prevent that kind of coercion. That's why we have the Australian ballot, the secret ballot in America. We didn't used to have that. When Daniel Boone stood up in front of his constituents and said, "You all may go to hell, I'm going to go to Texas," he knew which ones had voted against it. Because back then in Tennessee in 1835, they didn't have the secret ballot. People would get around and they'd drink whiskey and they would vote, you know, who's for Boone? And, you know, a bunch of them said, we're not for Boone, and he didn't get reelected to Congress. And, I'm sorry, if I said Boone, I meant David Crockett. I apologize. He wore a coonskin hat when he was a little kid. So now you're not allowed to take that picture. But the idea behind a cast vote record versus a ballot image, the ballot image wouldn't be connected to a specific person. It would be just like the old-fashioned paper ballot. It would be anonymous. It would be stored with all of the other ballots, and you could then pull them all out and take a look at them. That apparently is not available, and that seems to be an issue with the interpretation of the state law.
What precedents are there, if any, on what the definition of an image or ballot image are there in the law?
The definition is a little fuzzy, both in the statute and in the cases. This particular issue has always been evaded by the courts on things like standing issues. The NAACP said, hey, this isn't a ballot image, and the Supreme Court said, sorry, you guys don't have standing to bring that challenge. So we may be setting some new precedents here, plowing some new ground.
So David, a minute ago you said people make mistakes, people make errors. And we've talked earlier today about how the zero takes, according to state law, were not done. In fact, that's best practices everywhere. Because my understanding is with the e-slate voting system, best practices includes testing the systems, checking that they're reporting the correct votes by actually making some votes on it. And if you don't run the zero takes, you could retest votes on the system.
That's correct. Yeah.
And no fraud. It's just, again, a checks and balance. It's a safety net within the rule.
It's entirely possible that accidentally people left votes on there from the previous election or from the testing process. We're not alleging that there was a deliberate effort to steal this election or that Greg did anything wrong, but we can't know without compliance with the Texas election code who really won the election.
How many places are votes? Where are the memory centers for the e-slate? How many are there?
I don't know the answer to those kind of.
No.
Are you talking about the technical question of where it is in the machine?
Well, because I used to be in election day. There's 3. There's 2 on the e-slate and 1 on the whatever. Yeah. So if there was no tape run, why weren't the 3 different memory places, why weren't those not squaring at the end of the night?
I don't know the answer to that question.
They should.
Genevieve, I don't know that they actually do that. I don't know that they have to square. So the question is, do they square with the combination? That's really the bottom line.
I mean, they do the written and they do 3 different memory places.
Right, but the audit of the combination form with the names and what ballot style, what district, whatever, it's not reconciled. And actually, I think
That's not true. Having done that myself.
Okay.
But it's supposed to be done the way you're talking about. One of the things that we know from looking at
No,
this.
wait, I mean, at the end of an election night, but every person that is a judge does it. You have to do it or they don't let you leave the room.
With this combination across the county, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
The question is, how can someone down in Stone Range spell check that precinct, or, you know, that District 4 number is on that tape? They don't know.
No, yeah, it does. When it comes out at the end of the night, each ballot style is on the tape.
And
You
it's
can
a
actually square it
reconciliation.
exactly.
And it's a reconciliation, have a ballot style and number?
Yeah.
And with the JDC?
Yeah.
Well, we want to see that.
Well, we
We
look
wanna see
forward
that.
to examining
We
those
wanna
kind of
see
things. One of the things we know is that there were more votes reported in some of these precincts than there were voters. So obviously there's some kind of
Great, but
reconciliation.
how many are you talking about? Go back to the slide and let's talk about how many that was. Is
Yeah,
that
it's in every
just
single
ballot by
precinct.
mail, or is that,
No, it's-
there's the exact difference between ballot by mail, or are there missing ballots, or what?
There are, in every precinct, there's more ballots than votes. And do we know if that was a ballot by mail check? We have to get to the combination forms and the summaries to get to the.
But the ballot board should also be able to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So we're asking for all of the discovery is not trivial, and it's going to take, and we may need some volunteers to help us with that, so.
People with some expertise in this area would be very,
Yeah.
very much appreciated in terms of interpreting the data that we get. So to the extent that you have time and energy to help us make sense out of all of that, that would be very much appreciated.
What are the chances of having a paper revote, a paper ballot revote?
We'll see. We have a lot of bridges to cross before we get to that one. That might be the direction that the judge wants to go. It might be simpler for the county. It might be necessary to do something like that in order to comply with the election code. But we've got a lot of bridges to cross before we get to that one.
What judge are you talking about? Who's the judge?
Dan Mills. He is a judge from out in Burnett, Blanco County. He was a district judge, served a three-county district out there. I have been in front of Dan Mills before. I've had good experiences with him.
And I think we have to, interestingly, we have to have a judge that's outside of Travis, right?
That's right.
That's part of
That's right. The statute requires that it be a judge who is not in the area that elected the person. So obviously there would be a conflict of interest there. So you have to bring in an outside judge. I did one of these election election contests up in Hill County a few years ago, and they brought in a Travis County judge. So you'll always have somebody from outside who is the judge. And Dan Mills has got years of experience. I don't know how many election cases he's done before, but I look forward to working with him.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Would you be willing to share anything from your poll about the methodology, just so we could verify that it was a scientific one? Because I would never trust myself at the campaign to do a poll, and it seems a little unusual, especially when you're using it as a piece of your argument about.
I'll be honest with you, our polls were more consistent with the ballot by mail. That's why it just rang so true, because it was not consistent with the 2-to-1 at all. And I think, and that's not part of the contest, is to go through our, what our polls were. The bottom line is the numbers don't match up, and the ballot by mail and electronic voting don't match up. And the statistics of our election doesn't match anything for 11 years. That's the bottom line. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier that your numbers were the same between the general election and the runoff. Was that percentage or number of votes cast?
Percentage. And that's a very good question. It's so interesting to have the percentages be so exact when you've got thousands of different voters.
Yeah. You're saying basically all the other voters voted for the the other voters that voted for the 6 other candidates voted for the other person.
Exactly the same percentage. Yeah, so that's a really unusual thing.
It's all of the other races we looked at. There was much more variation. The variation between the first and the second round here is like that. And the closest of the other ones is more than 10 times as a percentage what the variation was in this race. And most of them were going to be somewhere between 30 and over 100 times variation percentage-wise. We're talking about 0.06% variation, which is about 1 or 2 votes.
Right, but doesn't that mean between the general and the runoff, who votes ballot by mail mostly? Senior citizens. It means you split it in the runoff, but did you win or lose ballot by mail in the general? Were you up or down in ballot by mail in the general? What was the difference between general and early voting?
Exactly the same with 6%.
Yeah, but it wasn't the same number. So 250 and 250, you split it in early vote, but in general election, you won it. That means you more successfully campaigned senior citizens.
So,
and they didn't. And I think if forget the percentage, forget the statistics part of it. Just looking at campaign builds a lot over the years. It looks like your supporters had more intensity in the runoff, but you weren't able to make up the difference between the initial and the runoff, meaning your people were going out to vote for you, period, right, in the general and the runoff. And you just had a larger base of people going to vote for him. That explains the numbers to me.
And that's one interpretation.
I have a question as far as his polling question. If we could move ahead, and I know it would possibly be a problem for senior voters at this point in time, but say, for instance, that before the election, Laura had advertised 2 people who voted for her. She would be standing out in front of the election place doing the polling as well. But it also said, please come to my website and check that you have voted for me if you did. Then if she had a number at her website that she got 5,000 votes and that the city had a different number than that, it would almost be like every candidate would have their website poll to compare to the city numbers, you know what I mean? So, not something that can be done right now, but almost a more advanced way of polling in the future for the next election.
How to fix this?
Oh, that too.
I'll tell you one thing. With the holes that we have right now in this system, I can understand why people don't vote. They don't think their vote matters. And I'm going to tell you what, with this, it's very compelling. I can understand why people don't vote. Okay, one question?
Would you favor a paper ballot revote?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's not up to me. It's really going to be up to the judge. Be up to the judge.
Is that something that your campaign will advocate for?
Well, like I said, it's not up to us.
Well,
It's not up to us.
the paper ballot, the advantage of the paper ballot, we all know, is you can recount it easily. Now, that doesn't mean you can't commit fraud with paper ballots. Everybody here knows about Duval County, right? Yeah. Okay, that was all done with paper ballots. LBJ stole that election, and every ballot was paper. So paper ballots are not immune to fraud. But it's a little harder, especially when you have a small election, to commit fraud if you have paper ballots. So, there are definitely advantages to paper ballots, particularly when it comes to the reading. Because even with an electronic image, it's still possible to mess with that. Of course, you can always, as LBJ did, you can vote people alphabetically all with the same handwriting on paper ballot. But at least, we can look at that election 60 years later, and we can see all those people voted in alphabetical order and they all had identical handwriting. That's probably not actually what happened. With an electronic record, there's no way we'd be able to find that kind of chicanery later.
Oh, no, there would be even more. You cannot.
Let's move on. Hey,
You can trace anything on a computer. I have worked in the industry for 30 years. There's nothing you can't trace.
I disagree.
okay, let's more
So
questions.
what are the implications with all the things I have as a busy person in my life? It's just say, you know, you didn't win. You lost. What are the implications with the information you presented today that if I just go on with my busy life and blow this off, what are the implications to me as a citizen?
The implications are huge because our elections define our vote. Who the people pick drive what our policies are, what our taxes are, what our utility rates are. I'm just thinking local. Okay? I think local is so much more important than state or national. And
Even direct ballot
your zoning, all of this is so critical.
Yeah, and the second part of my question would be, are there implications to the other runoffs and elections that have happened previous? And that's really the issue here, not just your campaign, but the campaigns that went before.
That's right. And the ones that get to come after us. So this is bigger than our little district. You know, we had 4,000 people vote. You know, if this is broken and these systems aren't in place and we've got, you know, holes in that net, everything's at risk.
So at the end of the day, I don't need to be for you in your campaign, you winning or losing. I don't even live in your district. However, if there is a significant and considerable discrepancy, and it may have happened before and will happen again, then it really questions a lot of who's making the choices for me and who's representing me.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. Whether you agree with, you want Laura Pressley as your District 4 rep, what we're doing is making sure that candidates everybody in here wants gets a fair shake. Not just me. It's very important to see.
I've got a curiosity question. How many folks here are not District 4?
Let me say this, because this is more important than just Laura. This is about it, right? This is about getting somebody elected the way it came out. If you got 37% of the vote, and somebody else got 25, why should the one that got 25 win? I mean, this is what we're looking at, and some of these numbers, when you start looking at some of the things that are there, because there was something inconsistent with the way it was supposed to have been done. It is a lot more than just what we're talking about here. I can tell you, for those of us who were in the study group, Dana DeBrouwer has been trying to get money to get it right. Now, whether or not after the HABA Act, and also you probably don't remember what all that acronym is. I hate acronyms, but I can't remember the whole doggone thing. But after that act, all that money that was spent on it was to get this electronic voting machines right. Now, Dan Wallet came back and started working with Dana DeBrouwer. Who's Dan Wallet? Do anybody know?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, but for those of you who know who he is, he's an expert out of Rice University. Okay? And those who remember the black box vote and all that stuff, well, we know now that Dana DeBrouwer is trying to get it right. But the money is not there anymore. They spend all the money on all these phony machines that are giving us phony returns. I'm not saying fraud.
Just for the benefit of those who don't know, these machines have had a lot of trouble in California and other states. They've pretty much been, they don't use them because of the problems. As far as Dana DeBrouwer, there was a meeting with Travis County Commissioners, and they set up a commission to look at these machines. She would not let the one person on earth who had seen the code and understood it come and testify for her commission. So I say she's not an independent person on this. She would not let them come. The Travis County Commissioners, we offered to bring the person here and let them testify before the Travis County Commissioners. They didn't want to hear it. So I don't think this is a fair process. No matter what his politics to say, there's problems.
And all of this is not
not an issue of money. Some of the things about not running the zero tapes, that doesn't cost.
It's a lot cheaper to run a zero tape than it is to do a contest.
Yeah.
It's a lot cheaper.
So this is not all of the fault of the machine. It's
I
the
agree.
process
That's
problem.
right. That's absolutely true. It's much cheaper to run those results tapes and the zero tapes than it is to do an election contest results.
And the decision to make, to file a contest is not dictated by a single irregularity. If there was only one irregularity, we probably wouldn't be here. But as you pointed out, there are a whole series of irregularities, beginning with the zero tapes. There's much more than that. It's the ballot by mail irregularities. It's there are too many votes to match up with the voters, those kind of irregularities. It's the fact that the machines don't produce images of the ballots. If we had just one of those things, we probably wouldn't be here today. But we have a whole bunch of flaws in the process. And as you pointed out, it affects the outcome, especially in close races. And there are many, many races that we have all participated in over the years where it was a nail biter. It came down to the very end, it was half a percentage less. Maybe the wrong person got the office in all of those races. We don't know, but we don't want that to ever happen. We want the person who got the most votes to get the office. And we want a clean and transparent election. We don't think that's too much.
Email this, please sign up. We've got a sign-in sheet. Please sign up and we'll keep you posted on what goes on. And you can trust me, I'm not going to step away from this one. That's for sure. That's for sure. I'm pretty stubborn and detail-oriented. And thank you to my precious husband for putting up with all of this.